Waiting for YouTube to turn on. It's thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like to dedicate a class. Please let us know.
Yes.
To all those that are watching on Facebook, share the video. Those that are watching on YouTube, subscribe. Let's get as many people learning as much Torah as possible. Facebook is thinking.
It's okay now.
There was once a student that was taking a very important exam in school. And when he handed in the exam to his teacher, she saw a paper clip with a $100 bill, and he wrote a small note, $1 for each point. 2 days later, she gives him back the test with $40 and says, "Here's your change."
Okay. That's great.
The parsha tells us the story about 5 daughters of a man named Tzlofchad. Tzlofchad was a person, one of the people who came out of Mitzrayim, and he died in the desert. And his daughters, these 5 sisters, came to Moshe Rabbeinu with a question. More than a question, a complaint, or even the background is like this. When the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, the families that left, they're each going to get a section in Eretz Yisrael. So first the land was divided by tribe. Every one of the tribes has a portion in Eretz Yisrael. And after that, every family, based on the father who left Egypt, would receive a section for his family. If he dies, his sons inherit it. And again, they subdivide that among themselves, having this portion of their family. Tzlofchad was a fellow who had no sons. He had 5 daughters, but no boys. And they came to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, "We have a portion from our father, but we can't inherit it. It's not fair. Just because we're not boys, we can't have the section. It's going to go to our father's brothers or wherever else. It's going to become part of the general collection or allotment of our shevet, of our tribe. What about us? And where are we going to live?" So Moshe immediately says, "I'm going to ask Hashem." He goes and he asks Hashem what to do. And Hashem tells him, God tells Moshe that it should go to them, to the daughters. And in general, this is the rule, that if there are no sons, the daughters inherit the section for the land regarding the portion of Eretz Yisrael. Fascinating halacha, a new law, which the Jewish people did not know of before. They now have this law thanks to the Bnei Tzlofchad.
The first inequality argument.
Now the question we have here is it so complicated that Moshe couldn't figure it out, that if you don't have sons, it goes to the daughters? First of all, Moshe is leading the Jewish people for already 39 years. He's learned a lot of Torah. He knows the mechanism of how we understand Jewish law, even when it doesn't say specifically what to do. Okay, there are ways that we deduce laws. There's a structure and, if you will, a science to Torah of how you can understand and apply laws to new cases. Why is it so complicated? You also don't find that he tried to figure it out. He instantly said, "I'm going to go ask Hashem." What's happening here? Did Moshe really forget or not know the halacha? He didn't understand. We didn't forget because it wasn't given yet. But did he really not know? It's pretty obvious that if there's no sons, well, what should we do with the girls? They should be homeless, destitute. Where should they live? Not going to give them anything. Rashi talks about this, and he gives 2 answers. In general, when Rashi gives 2 answers, it's because one of the answers is not strong enough. But here are the answers that Rashi gives. Firstly, Rashi says, this is kind of a punishment to Moshe Rabbeinu. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, when they were setting up the system of judgment in the desert, his father-in-law Yisro came and he saw Moshe standing there all day, and people are all coming from all over to ask questions, right? You have millions of people in the desert where we have this new law, right, called Torah, and we have questions about it, whether it's interpersonal disputes or general questions of how to behave. We're coming to Moshe. And his father-in-law suggested that there's no way to operate. You can't stand all day and answer questions. Why don't you set up a hierarchy of judges? You'll have one group that's first step. If you have a basic question, you go to them. And then if they don't know, they have supervisors and greater judges above them. And then there's higher and higher all the way to Moshe. So Moshe tells the people, here's how it's going to work. And he explains to them this system of judgment. In the end, he used the term, he said, Hadavar HaKoshe, the difficult stuff, bring it to me, I'll deal with it. Okay? So basic stuff, you guys could answer. If it's a little more complicated, the greater judges will answer. But ultimately, if it's really tough, I'll handle it. And Hashem said, that is not exactly the most humble way of speaking. And because you said, the difficult stuff I'll handle, here you didn't know the law, which seems to be pretty obvious that if you don't have boys, give it to the girls. But in this case, all of a sudden Moshe doesn't know. And he has to ask Hashem, which is a lesson or even somewhat of a punishment to this concept of, if it's difficult, I'll handle it. What happened to humility? That's answer number one. Answer number two is this has nothing to do with Moshe Rabbeinu messing up, and Moshe was very humble. Rather, it's in order to give a zchus to Bnei Tzlafchad. The daughters of Tzlafchad should get this merit, that a section in the Torah was given because of them. They went to Moshe and asked him a question. He didn't know the answer. He went to Hashem, and Hashem gave them the answer. And he said, from now on, this is the way it's going to be, that the girls will inherit. So it's not because of Moshe, it's because these daughters, these 5 sisters, deserved a special merit. Perhaps it's for how much they loved their Israel, how much they really wanted and pushed to get a portion in Israel. Whatever the reason may be, but they have this merit that they get a parsha given thanks to them. So Moshe forgets it, he answered the question. They had a question. It's a whole story. You have to go to Hashem. Hashem answers the question.
But they went
so
directly to Moshe. They didn't go up through.
Well, we'll soon see they did go through the process.
It's not so obvious.
The answer?
Yes.
Even if it's not obvious, Moshe could think about it and come up with the answer. You don't find that he even tried to explain it or think about it. He went to Hashem. It sounds like it was instant.
In some cultures, women don't inherit, period.
Okay. But in Jewish law, it does exist.
Yes,
Okay.
but maybe it was a new thing.
Okay. That could be an answer.
Maybe I'm wrong. Isn't Tzlafchad was Mikoshesh Etzim?
Yes, according to one opinion. But
Okay.
we're gonna let's continue. Then we'll.
Right. But the question is, isn't because he was judged to Kaf Zchut because he was Magen on Al Shabbat and sacrificed his life.
Yeah. We're gonna touch on it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. By the way, there's another situation where somebody, a great person, spoke a little bit too much about himself in a specific way. He didn't have that humility, if you will, and he was punished. And this is the story of Shmuel HaNavi. Shmuel HaNavi had a situation where Kish, Shaul's father, had donkeys that wandered off. And Kish sent his son Shaul to go find these donkeys with one of his servants. They go out around to find these donkeys, and they're searching, and they can't find it. There's no trace of these donkeys. And they heard that Shmuel HaNavi, the prophet, is in the area. They figured, let's go ask him. He sees things. He knows the future. He has divine wisdom. We'll ask him if he could tell us where our donkeys wandered off to. We can't find them. So they go looking for this prophet Shaul, and they find a guy, and they didn't know it was Shmuel, the prophet Shmuel. They didn't know it was him. So they say, Shmuel. They say, Mister, do you know where we could find the prophet Shmuel, the seer, the guy that could see stuff? And he says, that's me. I'm the seer. And you'll eat with me a meal, and afterwards I'll help you out, and so on. But the term that he used, I'm the seer, is looked at negatively. You should have figured out a way to say, I'm the one. I'm the guy you're looking for. I could help you. I could see the future. I could see things that you don't know. And later, when Hashem appointed him to go and appoint King David as king, he came there. And in Yishai's family, he saw an older brother who he thought was more handsome or more impressive in his appearance. And he said, he's the one. And Hashem said, hey, hold it. He's not the one. I meant David. And don't judge a book by its cover. It was like a punishment almost, for you came and said, I'm the seer. And then when it comes to appointing the king, you almost understood who it's supposed to be, not exactly such a seer all the time. So you find that this important element of speaking in a humble way, even if you have a lot to share or to give, it's an important, very important quality. So Moshe Rabbeinu, according to this first explanation of Rashi, because he said the difficult things come to me, therefore, in this case, he didn't know the answer. By the way, there's an interesting story that happened with the Rebbe. When the Rebbe first became Rebbe, it was 1951. Shortly thereafter, somebody came to Crown Heights, an older fellow with a long white beard, clearly a prominent Hasidic Jew, not Chabad, and he came to ask the Rebbe a question. But he didn't know exactly where he could find the Rebbe's shul, how do you get to the Rebbe's office, he wasn't sure. He's walking along the street, and he sees a fellow who was the Rebbe, but he didn't know what the Rebbe looks like. It's before the advent of such tremendous digital age with pictures, and the Rebbe just became Rebbe, he didn't know what it looks like. So he walks over to this fellow, he says, "Excuse me, do you know where I could find the Lubavitcher Rebbe?" So he looks at him and he says, "You want to see the Lubavitcher Rebbe? He's a young guy. You're coming from a distant place to see him?" So this fellow taps the Rebbe on the shoulder. He says, "Young man, what do you know about Rebbes?" It's not about age or anything like that. But it's just an example where you see the humility, where you see that even if you are the Rebbe, even if you are the seer, even if you do have the answers, there's a certain way how you approach this, a certain way how you answer it, as we see from the Rebbe's example. Okay. The Medrash, however, offers an alternative view. It's actually an opposite view. The Medrash tells us that these girls, they didn't go to Moshe Rabbeinu right away. When they started off, they went to the basic judges, level 1. They came in and they said, "What do we do? Our father has a portion in Israel, but he died, and we have no brothers. Is it going to be lost? Is there any way we could retain this?" So they said, "Hey, this is estate law, right? It's about estates. It's about property. We're not qualified to answer that question. Go up a level to the next level." And that's what they did. They went to the higher court and they heard their case and they said, "1 second, this is estate law. We can't deal with estate law. Go to the next level." And as they were going higher and higher, and each court realized that the lower court sent it to them because this was a very important question, portions in Eretz Yisrael, inheritance. They said, "Well, we can't answer that." And they kept going higher until it came to Moshe. And the Medrash says when Moshe got that question and he understood the background that each court is sending it up out of respect to this question, he said, "1 second, I'm not going to answer this one. Even though I may know the answer, I'm going to give it even more respect and send it to Hashem and ask him the question." So the Medrash learns it completely opposite. He says, not at all like that. The Medrash says that Moshe was humble, and out of his humility, he turned to Hashem to answer the question. Okay, so it shows you, once again, we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was very humble, and we know that Torah says he was the most humble person that ever lived, and this is a great example of that.
You can also approach it from point of who's the owner of the land. Hashem. Hashem decides.
Great, very good.
How to divide it. So he needs to have a permission from Hashem. He
Correct.
didn't want to take it upon himself.
Let's answer another question. Rabbeinu Bechaya gives a beautiful explanation to this whole story of Moshe Rabbeinu not knowing the answer and instantly turning to Hashem, not even trying to explain seemingly a basic law, or at least try to figure out according to Jewish principles of educating Jewish law. But before we give the Rabbeinu Bechaya's answer, let's ask a general question. And this is the topic of today's title. Can you really ever be objective? Okay? Can you ever really be objective? Is it possible for a human to look at a situation, give an answer without having biases? Okay? Do we say that when you're faced with a situation, even when you try to be objective, you are kind of stuck based on experiences that happened in your life prior, based on things that you've read or learned or so on? And when you're deciding something, all of these elements come into play. Okay? Today it's called cognitive bias, where a person is where a person is biased when he makes decisions. He does these things. He's not very. We'll call it. Sorry, I just thought there's noises here back and forth.
Maybe you need to ban someone.
So he was actually Moshe was advocating to not to Hashem.
Right. So let's see what he says. But about this idea, today modern psychology and general research agrees that people are biased, and you're constantly operating with what they call a cognitive bias. But it's fascinating to see that Yiddishkeit, our sages, thousands of years ago, and Torah already understood that people, as good as they want to be, you can't help yourself, and you're biased when it comes to making decisions and deciding stuff. Let's look at a Gemara in Sanhedrin, Tractate Sanhedrin, Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, 18b. The Gemara says like this: when it comes to setting the calendar, and we know the Jewish calendar works based on a lunar cycle, but at the same time, it has to be coordinated with the seasons. For example, Pesach has to be in the spring. Our sages understood that Sukkot also has to be before it gets too rainy, because in the rainy season, people can't travel and they can't experience the holiday. So every 2 or 3 years, we insert an extra month in the year, and it becomes a month. Instead of 12 months of the year, it becomes 13 months. Now, this is decided. Today we have a calendar, but back in the day, it was done with a panel of rabbis and the Sanhedrin, and the sages and rabbis sat together, and they figured out if this year should be a leap year or should it be next year. Because if you don't, every year you fall behind about 11 plus days, the lunar calendar versus the solar cycle. And after a couple of years, we're a couple of years off, a whole month behind, and even more and more. So the Gemara tells us that a melech, a king, is not allowed to be part of this Sanhedrin and part of this panel that is deciding which years are going to be a leap year. He's disqualified. And a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, is also disqualified. Okay, a king can't be part of the Sanhedrin, and a king and a Kohen Gadol, a high priest, cannot be part of the panel which decides which years should be a leap year. Why? So Rashi tells us, Mishum Afsanya. Afsanya is like this. A king has soldiers. He has an army. He pays this army. He pays them annually. So the king benefits financially when there's 13 months to the year, because these soldiers and this army gets paid for the year. If the year happened to have 13 months, then they get paid the same amount. If it happened to have 12 months, they get paid the same amount. Each year, you get paid. Think about it like someone's being paid for the month. He's on a salary. And some months have 30 days, 31 days. Some months have 28 days. Okay, so you get more days of work based on that. The king, personally, because of financial reasons, would appreciate a year that has 13 months. And therefore, we don't put him there. Because when he makes the decision, I think it should be this year, in his mind, or somewhere, even subconsciously, he has a bias that it should be a longer year. The Kohen Gadol, we don't want the high priest to be there, because the high priest also has an interest. Yom Kippur, he has to work in the Beis HaMikdash. And he has to tevel in the mikvah multiple times. And because he has to tevel in the mikvah, he doesn't want it to be cold. If you're going to make it a leap year, Yom Kippur will be later in the year. It's going to be colder. You know, they say Sukkot this year is cold, Sukkot this year is hot, right? It's after a leap year, it's going to be much later, it's going to be colder already in the winter. Yom Kippur, the Kohen Gadol, if he would be sitting on a panel, should we make a leap year this year or not? No, I don't want a leap year, because I'll be freezing when I have to go into that mikvah. That's Rashi's opinion. Tosfos argues, and Tosfos says that they warmed the mikvah, so it wasn't a problem. But the issue is that the ground of the Beis HaMikdash was cold. And the priests and the high priests, they served in the temple. The Kohanim and the Kohanim Gedolim served barefoot. So he doesn't want to have to serve barefoot all day on Yom Kippur when it's cold. But however you look at it, he has a bias here. So think about it. The king is responsible for the well-being of the people. And we're concerned that maybe for a financial reason, how much of a financial reason is it already? It's a month. He's going to benefit, and therefore he's not going to say the right thing, what's appropriate for the people. And by the way, a leap year is not a small thing. It's not technical. It has to do with mitzvahs, when Pesach is, when the holidays are. It's not a small, technicality. It has major impact. You think the king is really not going to care? Oh, I just wanted a little more money. The high priest, on Yom Kippur, holiest day of the year, the holiest person, in the holiest place, he's going to play games, a little warmer, a little cooler. I want a little more comfort for my feet, so I'm going to change the whole calendar. But Torah recognizes, and our sages appreciated this aspect, that sometimes you make a decision and you can't help your bias. You're trying to be objective, but you're not, because you're human. And deep down, the love for yourself or your own personal interest, you think you're not being biased, but you really are. Okay. They say the joke about the fellow who was in real trouble with the courts. There was actually he had a partner that was suing him, and it was a big problem. And the lawyer told him, "I don't see much hope." So he tells the lawyer, "Maybe we could bribe the judge." He says, "Bribe the judge? You don't know this judge. He's such a straight, moral, ethical person. If you bribe him, it'll work against you." Anyway, court date comes, and he wins. As they're walking out of the courtroom, this client tells his lawyer, "Thanks for the advice about the bribery." He says, "Bribe him?" He stops like in his tracks. "You didn't bribe him." He said, "I sure did. I gave him a case of whiskey and an envelope with $10,000. He says, "I don't believe you." He said, and a business card of my partner." When a person has to make a decision, he gets impacted by certain biases, whether he likes it or not. The Gemara tells us in Ksubis, Kufhei Amud Beis, beautiful series of stories about sages who recognized that if there's any type of bribery, it's going to blind them, as Torah says, and they're not going to be able to give the proper judgment, even if they want to. The Gemara says like this: Shmuel, the sage, which, by the way, he was the one that if there's a dispute regarding monetary issues, we follow his ruling. Halacha kerav v'yisura o kishmol b'malmeina. He was an expert when it came to monetary issues. But in any case, he was once crossing a river on a board. He didn't have a boat or anything. He was floating across on a board. And someone came by and gave him a hand. "Here, hold my hand. I'll help you cross." So Shmuel's talking to him, and he says, "Tell me, what brings you to town? You don't live in this area." He says, "Oh, me? I have a court case. I'm being sued, and I have a court case." So Shmuel says, I can't take your case. "Why not?" "Well, because you gave me a hand, and that's a form of bribery. You helped me, and I can't allow that to happen." That's how careful they were of bribery. Okay. Another story, the Gemara says about a Meimar who was sitting and deciding a law, and a bird landed on his head. Okay, he's sitting in court, and a bird. So one of the people in the court took the bird off his head. So he said, "I can't help you. I can't do your case because you just did me a favor, and there's a tiny little bit of bribery.
Yeah.
It's going to impact the way I think." Okay, Mar Ukva, another sage, who was once speaking, and some saliva, I guess, got on him, and someone came and wiped it away. He said, "I can't judge your cases because you just helped me." So it's a bribery. And perhaps the greatest story of all is Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Yishmael, the Rabbi Yossi, had a sharecropper. The way it worked was, very often, if you owned the field, you make a deal with a guy. You could lease my field, you cultivate it, you do all the produce, and give me a share every week, every month, whatever, of the produce. And the rest is yours to keep. So he had a fellow who one Thursday comes to him with a basket of fruit. "Here's my weekly pay that I have to give you." Usually he would come on Fridays. So he asked him, "Why are you here today on Thursday, not on Friday?" So the Gemara says the sharecropper told him, because I have a lawsuit here anyways. I have to come to court. I figured, why should I come twice to the city? I'll bring it now. So Rabbi Shmuel said, I can't take your case. Why not? Because you just brought me fruit. But it's your fruit. I would bring it to you anyways. I would have brought it to you tomorrow. He says, I can't do it. You brought me something a day earlier. That's mine. I can't take your case. And the Gemara continues that he gave him different judges, and he said someone else should handle this case. But he was watching the case. And as he's watching, he finds himself thinking to himself, Rabbi Shmuel, if only the guy would say this, he'll win. Just say that argument. Just do. He's rooting for him. Why? Because he gave him fruits a day earlier. So these great sages, who their job was, and they were honest, and they were trying to do things the appropriate, correct way, but they recognized that there's a certain human bias which you have to be very careful of. Okay? Rabbeinu Bechaya tells us the following tremendous explanation about Moshe Rabbeinu. When the daughters of Tzlafchad came to Moshe, and they said, our father died, they added one more line. Our father was not part of the group of Korach that rebelled against you, Moshe.
Mm-hmm.
He died for other reasons, right? Maybe because he ate some or whatever. Now, as soon as Moshe Rabbeinu heard that, he said, 1 second. So you're trying to tell me, just a brief background. Korach, a few weeks ago, we learned about a man named Korach who staged a rebellion against Moshe Rabbeinu, 250 people, and they fought him, and they said that Moshe Rabbeinu was just coming on his own, and God didn't tell him to appoint his brother, and he's doing this for personal reasons. They really challenged Moshe's legitimacy and leadership. And in the end, through a tremendous display of a miraculous intervention, the earth opened up, and it swallowed Korach and all his people inside. So the daughters of Tzlafchad come to Moshe, and they're telling their case about their father's portion of the land. They say, he didn't die because of Korach. In other words, he wasn't against you. He died for his own sin. Says Rabbeinu Bechaya, when Moshe Rabbeinu heard that, he said, 1 second, I am not going to even attempt to answer this question. Why? Because I'm biased. Exactly. He became a Negea B'davar, says the Rabbi. Exactly those words. That now he is partial. He has an interest here. This guy was on my team. I want him to win. I want his family to get the land. I don't want him to get lost. Now think about it. Moshe Rabbeinu was challenged 39 years ago or 38 years ago. Okay. Since then, nobody challenged him. And even when it was challenged, it was so proven wrong with such a miraculous occurrence, nobody could ever think, he doesn't need that girl to say, oh, my father wasn't against you. He gets nothing from it. This verbal bribery is worth absolutely zero to him. But Moshe Rabbeinu said, I have a bias. I'm going to Hashem. I'm not even going to talk about this case. Let Hashem answer it. Because who knows, maybe that's not the law. And I'm leaning in their favor because their father was on my side. That's how careful you have to be. And by the way, we have another story about Pinchas. The end of last week's parsha, the whole story, briefly, Zimri, which was a leader of a tribe of Shimon, went and sinned with a Midianite woman. It was a terrible display of the Midianite women that came. The Moabite women came into the camp, and some Jews were sinning with them, and then the princess came, and Zimri, the leader of the tribe of Shimon, was going to sin with her. And he came to Moshe Rabbeinu in a very defiant way, and he said, Moshe, is this girl allowed to me or not? Of course not. And he said, if you're going to say that this Moabite woman is not allowed to me, who allowed you to marry your wife, who was from Midian? Now, obviously, she converted. And Moshe was quiet. He didn't say a word. Everyone was sitting there crying. What's going to be? And there's a plague going on. And Pinchas went and he took care of the situation. I'm not getting into all the details right now. Why didn't Moshe? Well, Moshe doesn't know the law. You forgot. And the Rabbi says he didn't forget. Exactly. He's biased. Once the guy came to him and said, if you don't say that she's allowed, what about your wife? The moment you brought me personally into the situation, I'm not dealing with this. Because now I'm biased. And if I'm biased, I can't deal with it. Because I'm not going to be honest, potentially. Now, Moshe Rabbeinu will be honest. He's Moshe Rabbeinu. And there's a very clear answer. Any child knows the answer. But that's Moshe Rabbeinu. That's our sages. That is our prophets. To recognize that we have a bias that's natural. There's nothing wrong with it, but recognize it. And I want to talk about another idea here, which I think is extremely important. It's so important that the Rebbe talks about this. And when the Rebbe spoke about it, he said it in a way of, it's called bakosha nafshis. It's a personal request. Okay, he says like this. Because people are biased, they need to have a third party, an outside party, which will help them make certain decisions. Okay, let's preface with the story. The Gemara tells us in Brachas, Daf Hey Amud Beis, that F.R.E.E. bar Abba, this great sage, once took ill. He was sick. Okay, and he was in terrible pain and suffering. Rabbi Yochanan came to visit him, and Rabbi Yochanan said, "Do you want this suffering? Maybe there's some kind of spiritual significance. Do you want this suffering?" And he said, "No, I don't want any benefit from the suffering. I don't want any pain from the suffering. I don't want the suffering." So Rabbi Yochanan told him, "Give me your hand." And he took his hand and he healed him. He was healed. A little while later, Rabbi Yochanan took ill, and another sage came to visit him. Rabbi Hanania came to visit him, and he said, "Do you want this pain and suffering? Do you want this, some kind of benefit from the suffering?" He said, "No, I don't want the benefit. I don't want the pain. I don't need the suffering." So he said, "Give me your hand." And Rabbi Hanania took the hand and he healed him. So the Gemara asks, if Rabbi Yochanan could heal as he did in the first case, why does he need Rabbi Hanania to pull his hand? Heal yourself. You have the healing powers. Do it yourself. The Gemara answers, which means the one that's imprisoned cannot free himself from prison. It's not because you don't have the capabilities. You're in there, so you can't free yourself from the problem. So when Rabbi Yochanan was the healthy one, he could heal his colleague, F.R.E.E. bar Abba, who's sick. When Rabbi Yochanan himself is sick, someone else has to heal him. The concept is like this. People are biased. The Mishnah tells us, we're going to learn it the Shabbos and Pirkei Avos, Yeshua Prachya Eimer, the great sage Yeshua said, which means make for yourself, assume for yourself a Rav, a master or a teacher. And this is what the Rebbe talks about. A person needs to have a mentor. You're making a decision. Should I move to this city or to that city? Should I take this job or that job? Should I buy this house in this neighborhood or not? When you make those decisions, what's going on in your mind, whether you like it or not, is a certain bias. You're trying to do the best or the right thing, but because you love yourself, you say, maybe I'll do this because it's better for me. I like it. I have better friends there. I have something else. You're not doing it for the ultimate true reason. Or you give yourself too much slack, right? I should really make some changes in my life. No, I don't have to. Spiritual reasons. You're coming and you're taking a decision about yourself and your life, and you think that you're impartial enough to make the right move. You're not. You have to have a mentor. The Rebbe says, Bakosha Nafshis, it's a personal request. He says, I haven't found a term that's stronger than that. But it's really something which I'm asking, says the Rebbe, to publicize in all places. People must have mentors. When it comes to making decisions, ask someone to help you. When it comes to your own spiritual growth, don't rely on yourself. Okay, I think I should learn this amount. I think I should pray for this long. Go to your mentor who knows you, who cares about you, who knows what's right, who you trust and like, respect, and ask him. The Rebbe says a powerful thing. And if you can't find someone that's greater than you because you're the greatest, find someone that's not as great as you. It's okay. The benefit here is not that he's smarter than you. That's not what we're looking for. The benefit that he's not you, and he's objective. That's the greatness here. If you go to someone else and say, what do you think the right thing to do is? And this person knows you, and he knows what's right and what's wrong. And you ask him, I'll give you a typical example from students in yeshiva. Students in yeshiva make decisions every few years what school they're going to go to learn in, right? Should he go study in Israel or should he go study in New York. Okay, and there are pros and cons in each place. Every case is different. Every student is different. So he might want to go to Israel because it's more fun. But he may have better friends, and he's going to learn better and better teachers for his situation in the school in New York. If he makes his own decision, who knows if he's making what's best for him? He's doing what he wants. Okay, a person has to decide where to work. Maybe it's more money. Maybe he likes it better. Maybe he's better at that type of expertise. There's considerations that go on here. Ask a third party. Don't take this on yourself. If Moshe Rabbeinu, the most humble person that ever lived, Moshe Rabbeinu's the prophet who it says b'chol beisi nemanu, he's trustworthy in my whole house. Hashem says this guy is open door policy. He says, I'm not making the decision myself because I'm partial here, and I have a bias here. How much more so ourselves in our own lives, whether it's spiritual or material matters? Get a mashpia, get a mentor, ask him for his advice, for his guidance, and do what he says. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Very good.
Bad luck with